know and love come to you like the sound of equipment being thrown from a moving van, the sound of dead cell phones and oil rigs, the sound of empty parking lots and school buses. They love to live and live to love. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Children of America, the White Stripes.
Hello. Come on in. The water's great. My name is Ryan Schaap, and this is the hardest podcast to podcast. Hope you are enjoying this podcast in some sort of summery environment, summery situation. It's July 1st when this comes out. Hey, happy Canada Day to all the Canucks listening to this podcast, and to our neighbors to the south or overseas. Canada Day is a day. That's about it. It's nice. People will slather up a pancake shaped like a beaver tail, smother it with maple syrup, and wash it down with a delicious ice-cold Molson Canadian. They'll feel terrible, but they'll have done their civic duty. This is a very fun conversation with a good friend of mine, Mr. Matt Kerr. You know it's a good song and leaves a lasting impression on you when you can talk about it for over an hour, with minimal tangents, rants, or trips down side roads. I got a great email this week from a listener. Their name is Chantel. The subject of the email, at first I thought it was like a podcasty scam. You know, if you have a podcast and a public-facing email like ours is hardestpodtopod@gmail.com, you will get these random things that say, "Oh, your show has been listed in Good Pods, number 21 of music podcasts." Which, hey, that'd be nice to be number 21, and we can be number 21 by you rating and reviewing on your podcast platform of choice and telling 7 friends. Don't be selfish. Don't eat shellfish. So I think, you know, the subject line from Chantel's email was like, "Your target audience has been reached," with an emoji. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It was nothing but kind words, appreciation for the podcast, and just a good kind of an outline of her story getting into the White Stripes and Jack White's music. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed conversing with Chantel. They asked a great question. They said, "Something I've noticed and love," in brackets, "in literally all of JW's projects is how he shouts 'yeah' or 'hey' all the time and at random. It doesn't matter if he's singing a song or not. You can hear him shout in Dead Weather songs or performances with Wanda Jackson. It happens in the studio recordings as well as live performances. To me, it's a real manifestation of his love and appreciation for music. Like he feels the music in the moment so much that it comes out when he shouts. It's one of my favorite things about him, and I think it'd be cool to hear your thoughts on it on the podcast." You're right. It's one of the cooler things he does. Number one, of course, is the traditional Jack White woo. I'm going to make a supercut of that in the coming weeks because nothing kicks more ass than one of those White Stripes woos when something's really picking up. I believe it was on Rag and Bone or Bone Broke off Icky Thump where the woo returned. And I was like, okay, here we go. Jack's wooing again when a song's getting good. Jack's wooing again when he stomps on his electro harmonics Big Muff Pie. Jack's wooing again when Meg just sneaks in one of those unassuming fills that just takes the song up to the next level and they're cooking with gasoline. That is number one, the Jack White woo. Now, woo aside, the random yas or heys are very good too, and I've always noticed them as well. You will hear them on the record, I assume, and this is my assumption, from seeing the White Stripes perform live and the communication that goes on between them on stage, it being just two of them, and for the most part, Jack has his back to Meg for 90% percent of the show. So they've come up with ways to communicate. They've got Jack has the mirror on the organ so that he can, make eye contact with Meg and make sure they're on the same page. But for the most part, with the Yaz and the Haze, there's two types. There's Yaz and Haze when he's fired up, and that rules. It's like a less woo. It's a right underneath the woo on the Jack White sound categories. So he definitely has those. They definitely represent him getting fired up, in my opinion and yours, and I'm all for them. They're especially great when maybe they're picked up on something recorded off the floor, and it's not in a vocal mic, so you can just really hear that, and you can really feel that. But I also know that in songs that have a tempo change or just like a style change between the verses and the chorus, maybe just to keep everybody honest, to keep Meg honest, and or maybe just getting lost in the sauce, you'll randomly hear a hey or an all right. A good example of that is The Air Near My Fingers off Elephant. There's a hey right off the bat. Hey. And then right as the song kind of picks up into a solo, there's another thing that is said by Jack White. Hey! So I'm going to do some more research on this, because this is why you come to the Hardest Podcast to podcast. For the truth, the facts, the hard work, and the evidence. And I'm going to give that to you. No knock to Chantel, but when it comes to Jack White sound effects, the Jack White woo is number one, baby. Number one with a bullet. Like Chantel, if you're liking what we're doing on this podcast, how about you head to buymeacoffee.com/hardestpodtopod. buymeacoffee.com/hardestpodtopod, and you can chip in a few bucks to buy us a air quotes coffee. You can tell us that is for an air quotes beer, or an air quotes London fog, or an air quotes Moscow mule, or an air quotes podcast hosting fees and associated charges that come with that. As we said last week, and I'm telling you again this week, to grow the footprint of the show, go tell 7 friends. Just like Jack White said on No Name. So every week when a new podcast comes out, it gets bigger, it gets louder, more people talk about it. The fat cats, the big wigs, they're not fat cats. I'm sure they're very nice people. The head honchos over at Third Man Records, they're going to hear about this show. They're going to take note of the quality of the work, and they're going to hear about our goal on the show, and they're going to say, maybe it's time to throw them a bone. The goal of this show? Hey, maybe you're a first-timer here. The goal of this show is simple. I'm here to celebrate every single song in the White Stripes catalog. They are my favorite act of all time, and I want to celebrate them and shine a spotlight on a catalog of music that is aging like a fine wine, and it was already pretty damn delicious when it was released. The goal of this show is to discuss every song. So every week a guest will join me and we'll discuss one song. This week it's I Think I Smell a Rat. Next week, we don't know. I know, but I'm not going to tell you. And we'll do this for all their songs, with the exception of 3. I have handpicked 3 mystery songs that we will reserve for Jack White. The goal of this show is to make enough noise and create a big enough buzz and footprint and following that they find out about this show. Maybe they hear it, or maybe they just hear that we are making shit happen, and Jack comes on and we discuss that song. And then he comes on 2 more times. It is a lofty goal on this show, and the goal is to have Jack White be interviewed by me in conversation 3 times. Will it happen? Yeah, I think it will. You got to be optimistic in life. Imagine if you started listening to this show and I put out this goal, and then you ask, hey, do you think it's going to happen? And I go, no. Like, you're turning this off immediately. But I'm here to be confident, not cocky, and believing in my goal, in myself. And so when I say, yeah, I think it's going to happen, you go, all right, I'll hit subscribe. I'll hit follow. I'll rate and review. I'll tell 7 friends. I won't eat shellfish because I'm allergic. So yeah, that's what we're doing on this show. I'm glad you're along for the ride. With that being said, it is now time for our call to action this week. What do I need you to do? Well, go to your streaming platform of choice and go find White Blood Cells. The regular one or the deluxe one, or either or. Go to track 11. I Think I Smell a Rat. It's time to hit pause. And on the other side of the break, it's I Think I Smell a Rat. Our guest this week plays drums for the hardcore outfit Terrifying Girls High School. He is also the executive producer of the critically acclaimed film Riceboy Sleeps and the upcoming film Thanks to the Hard Work of Elephants. And you can catch him gambling on United Football League games weekly on your streaming platform of choice. He is Matt Kerr. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Now this film, Hard Work of Elephants, I'm going to assume that this is something to do with the White Stripes' critically acclaimed 2003 album Elephant. Is this correct?
Well, not directly, but in the sense that all art that comes after it is inspired by it, at least, through some knock-on effect. I would say yes. But not in the direct sense. Yeah, that type of.
I like this diplomatic answer. Now, this is
it's diplomatic, but I also believe it, right? Like, this is a tremendous band that is inescapable in their influence.
Matt, you are the second Kerr brother to appear on this podcast. Your younger brother, Charlie, appeared in the first episode, lead singer of Hotel Mira. He mentioned that you two had a guitar and drums outfit in your younger age.
We've played in many bands together. Off the top of my head, we played in a band in elementary school, if I'm remembering correctly, called The Luckies, which was a collection of local boys who shared the same music teacher, a guy named Al McInnes, who plays bass in a band called Jazzberry Ram, a local legend by my estimation.
Not the hockey player that's a distant cousin of Jack White.
Not related, strangely not related. Also a hockey player, but not of that caliber. Not quite. Not blasting 104-mile-an-hour slap shots or anything like that. If I remember my McInnes stat lines properly.
But you two clearly were influenced. Were you influenced by the White Stripes to have a stripped down outfit like that through your adolescent years?
Definitely. And most of the work we were doing between, those grade 6 kind of bands to the end of high school was the vast majority was covers, right? We weren't writing a lot of music back then, or at least I wasn't in bands that were writing a lot of music. I shouldn't speak for Charlie. He was definitely writing music all throughout that period. But, the type of stuff I was doing, it was all covers, and White Stripes and raconteurs to some extent all made it into the mix pretty regularly.
What was something about the White Stripes that really resonated with you at that age?
The aesthetic was just undeniable to me. The idea that you kind of always know what you were going to get, and it was very formal, really spoke to me. They're always coming out in one of 3 colors primarily, and 2 of those colors are just the far ends of the spectrum. It's white and black, and then you got red in the middle there, right? So these people are very uniformed and reliable in this way. And then, the fact that they're a married couple, but they're both kind of that Emily the Strange vibe, where you've got extremely pale skin and dark hair. They kind of look like they could be related, but they're not. They're married or were married for some portion of time. Really like that. Yeah, I just kind of liked that they were like they let simplicity be at the center of everything they do, but the technique was always very, very on point as well. It's like not, it's simple but not dumb. If that makes any sense.
I think it's perfect, and I think that's what summed up what is and was in the moment just so special about the band. It's like, here is the most stripped down, here's the most basic primary elements of what rock and roll music is and what design is, and
Yeah.
the second album to Still is all about that Dutch movement. Like, it's all about that, but then when you listen to the songs, it's almost like the simpler the songs are and the more space there is on the music, on the record, the more complicated it just allows you to interpret as, which
Yeah.
is something I'm finding a whole new love for with this band. You have been lucky enough to be selected at our little random process here to get a key track off of White Blood Cells, their 2001 album. Pitchfork gave it a 9. It's I Think I Smell a Rat. And when I told you that you were doing this song, you were pretty fired up. You were pretty stoked about it. Just on a surface level, what do you take away from this song, and just what drives you when you hear this song?
Well, it is not to sound silly, but it is a very White Stripes song. I think
Yes, it is.
the song clocks in at about 90 seconds total. On the guitar side, it's a little Spanish style riff followed by some I'm not a guitarist, I could be getting this wrong. Like 4 power chords, like dun 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 dun. So Spanish riff, power chords, Spanish riff, power chords, and the drums are doing dead simple beat and then matching the power chords. There's not a lot going on there, but it's all executed perfectly. Then the melody and the lyrics to the vocal portion also extremely simple. I think there's probably 6 lines of written words in the whole song, and they're all sung to the same melody. Very simple, very, I don't know, just a pleasing little tight package of a song. Love it.
Would you say that this song perfectly encapsulates your very well delivered kind of summary of the band? It's simple, but it's not dumb. Like,
yes, it's like, like my favorite grocery store. No frills. It's just it's exactly everything you want, nothing you don't, and no wasted time. And that's something, I've been in punk bands for most of my adult life, and it is a mortal sin to waste anyone's time over, let's say, 90 seconds. And I think it's a very, very smart songwriting to not spend a bunch of time twiddling around, stroking your own ego. You're like, how long can I solo here? And no one's interested in the answer to that question other than the guitarist and maybe some guys who work at Guitar Center or Long and McQuaid. Long and McQuaid was probably the better reference for someone who just brought up No Frills. God, sorry, I'm already ruining this podcast.
We are a podcast that is all about celebrating the very unique styles of this band, and that comes with shining a very positive spotlight on the contributions of Meg White. And I was watching a lot of live versions of this song before we hopped on, and we'll talk about its live history in a little bit. But I had never watched her play the drums for this song. Do you know what she is playing during the the power chord part, the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, she's just matching those downstrokes with I think it's floor tom, a cymbal, and the bass drum all at the same time. So it's just like bop 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 bop, like very simple, but very effective. It's exactly what I would want to do there.
Yeah,
personally, like, and then
it's
it's a bit
she
like
has. They have a couple of songs that, like, famously, there is a long-standing joke with the band that's like when they're talking about "Let's Shake Hands," one of the the first single that they ever released. It's like Meg can perform this with one arm, and
yeah
she does.
yeah
With this song, for the heavier parts, she's going on the floor tom and the rack tom,
mhm.
and I don't know about you, so she's like leaning over the snare drum, and I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen a drummer play like that before. And it's another thing about this song that just kind of blows my mind about how can we make this the most simple thing in the world, but also make it incredibly unique and stand out.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. The drummer that I always am kind of reminded of when I think of Meg White is Ringo Starr. Mostly because the way I understand the White Stripes is Meg is kind of unfairly derided for an overly
Yeah.
simplistic style. It feels like people um want everyone to be Neil Peart. In terms of like the guitar magazine, drum magazine kind of folks out there. They want
Yeah.
everything to be hyper technical and complicated. And when I think of Ringo Starr, I think of a guy who wasn't asked to do much in terms of super complicated stuff, but was executing everything at a very high level. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, was just derided for being asked to do something simple and executing it, like, which I think is a huge shame to the kind of music analysis world, right? Like, you've got this quote where I think it was John Lennon said that Ringo's not even the best drummer in the Beatles, and that has made that line has made its way around the internet and the water cooler.
It went from being funny to
Yeah,
mean to funny
yeah,
again to
but like,
twice as mean.
there's a couple songs in the Beatles catalog that were written by Ringo Starr that, you know, if you didn't have the Beatles, would be missing those songs, and then they'd be missing a few 100 million streams or whatever, if that's the uh, metric we want to talk about. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Popular
But
stuff here. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a Meg White just is a again just like everything the White Stripes do. Simple, everything you need, nothing you don't, and executed, you know, very competently and rocking. They're rocking out.
I think that's what we need to lead with, is that this band just, like, man, they just kill it. Like, I've on the subject of Meg, like, I've been watching and listening to kind of her progression, and Jack famously said, like, he wanted Meg to play the drums like a child hopping on for the first time and being kind of bombastic and all over the place, and didn't want her to practice. And like, I'm watching them play and in Elephant era, the Get Behind Me Satan era, and then like by Icky Thump, like that is a tight and just like detailed player. Like, and she is locked in, and watching her live, like she just got better and better, and it was just so cool to see.
Do you get the sense that that quote is kind of like her "not even the best drummer in the Beatles" quote, where people hear that and they want to think that, like, oh, she didn't practice, she was bad, like, you know what I'm saying, like the haters, I mean.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It was an easy thing when you talk about people wanting the Guitar Center guys and the
yeah
Neil Peart drummers. You get this easy ammunition, and then you add on the fact that she's a woman, and we all know how the miserable rough ride that they get performing in rock music. And it was just like these numbskulls, these smooth brain mouth breathers would be like, well, that's obviously bad because it's not that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
obviously, misogyny probably plays a pretty decent sized role in this whole thing, which is unfortunate, but definitely the case.
Yeah. So I was somebody on Reddit, on the Jack White Reddit, sent me a link to basically a fan-made Wikipedia from this White Stripes forum from 20 years ago that I was a part of. It's so old, it stopped being... it was not updated for Icky Thump, but there is some absolute gems in this.
And this thing's still being hosted by some soldier. Like some hero is hosting this website.
Dude, it takes so long. Like, I'm saying it took a minute to load this basic text. And I'm like
Google Chrome that like loads things so fast. Like
it's like, it's coming.
Beautiful.
There's nothing on this. But there's some, White Stripes fans from back in the day really cataloged a lot of quotes, like the White Stripes fan base, and I'm a part of it, we really rallied for this band. We cheered for this band. We wanted them to succeed, and we wanted to really, hoist them up a bit more than, your other favorite bands. So there's a lot in here, and I want to share a couple quotes. We're learning we're learning through rediscovery that Jack White at this point in his life wasn't the best quote. His best way to express himself was through his music. He was undefeated against that. But in terms of quotes, he kind of, he had a gimmick of this anti-technology, let's be old-timey. Let's make, let's be stuck in the, the mid 1960s or earlier. So he kind of, he just said some things that were uncool, not problematic, but just that's kind of lame.
Not to be you're the subject matter expert here. I haven't had the same amount of contact with this stuff, but I also imagine that based on his art, he's very unlikely to be an over talker. Like for a person who wants to let the art speak for itself and have it be very simple and profound, like getting into your little inspirations, like getting into the nitty gritty details of how you found a guitar sound, that kind of ruins it, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, and then like, he's kind of a wacky talker, so maybe just lets a lot of that, let tone and what do you call it, like vibe carry the day rather than the words in the interview. So when you read the words, they're kind of like, well, that interview sucked, but in the room it might have been awesome.
Yeah, and like, and Meg doesn't want to say anything. She's so quiet and reserved that a lot of her interviews had subtitles, like especially in their documentary about their Canadian tour. So like, these are two people, and you see it with Jack. Like he doesn't kind of get that confidence and that swagger like until probably after Elephant has come out and kind of they've become a bit of a household name. Leading up to that, he is shy and reserved and kind of socially awkward and that's fine. Like most of us are. And as you have a band that is this unique little art project that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, going from your little room to your bigger room, you just, it's difficult to navigate and difficult to turn on I know how to make good quotes and sound good and perfectly articulate my music. When you said it perfectly, he's never been one to kind of define his art. He's never been one to here's how you do it. He's somebody that loves the artistic process and he's his journey to creating art has been celebrated. But there's a couple of great quotes in this. And again, I love Jack White. He is my favorite artist. But I couldn't help but laugh at this one. They're asked about this song, I Think I Smell a Rat. And he goes, there's these punk kids who break windows and stuff like that. You know, make fun of me when I walk into the gas station. It's like, I've lived here my whole life, and he's 8 years old and talking to me like that. They'll bust your window. And then you go take them to their parents, and their parents take their side. They get away with murder.
I love it. Even as a relatively young man, he had very much get off my lawn energy. He's like,
you damn kids.
The kids at the gas station don't respect me. Like, I'm trying to buy cigs, yo. Like, let me live. I
this is my
he's a
block.
cig guy. I could be wrong. I don't have evidence of that.
They love smoking. Oh,
yeah, I figured. I just didn't have evidence, proof positive, you know?
Oh, yeah, those two love smoking. That's why they were so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I just love the idea of like this like punk kid on a BMX outside of AM/PM in Detroit. You're like, hey nerd, get out of here, loser.
What do you call it? Like a very specific brand of shithead, like a Detroit. Like they don't make them like that anywhere else. I'm imagining.
Oh
like
god,
a kid riding
one.
A bike with like only one functional gear. You know,
and it's not a fixie.
No, it's not a fixie. I'm saying one that works, like one that has the teeth still like uncorroded, and you know maybe he's got a big gulp, and he's a menace.
Yeah, and Jack's not having it, and then one day he shows up with a baseball bat, and he's like, all right, the hell with this. Jack White also said that he absolutely loves this song, and it shows. It's been a staple of their live. It was a staple of their live show, and it's a song he still plays today. But he also said on this song, we wrote that song the day before we left for Memphis. White Blood Cells was recorded in Memphis, Tennessee, in kind of like, you know, the first two albums are recorded in Jack White's living room, kind of co-producing it with some scumbag who tried to sue him and say that he like created their sound, which is BS, and luckily the White Stripes won that lawsuit.
he created their nothing sound? What does that even mean? Like, I don't want to be a jerk here, but like their sound is drums and a rock guitar. Like, what? The guy, it I don't know how to explain this, but it defies it's so confusing. I don't understand how you could even make that claim without, you know, just cringing yourself into another dimension.
Took the jury 20 minutes.
Yeah, I would hope so.
The guy's name's Jim Diamond.
Oh, geez. What do you call it? Industry snakes everywhere.
So they go to Memphis to record the album in like a proper studio for the first time. Jack famously says to the engineer, "Hey, don't make us sound too good." Like they've cultivated this sick sound and vibe, and they're like, let's not get too crazy now. The phrase, I think I smell a rat. There was one day when I was home by myself and I played one chord on the piano, and I just kept saying that over and over. I think I smell a rat. And I could never think of anything else to go with it. I loved it because I had this whole thing imagined that it would go into this swinging, finger snapping thing. But after that, I never finished writing it. We had another song that was called That's Where It's At that they didn't put on the first album. I can't find any version of this anyway. Actually, I've got their 20th anniversary thing right here, and I've totally forgot to look at it. But they had this song that was called That's Where It's At. It didn't go on the first album. Mm-hmm. The lyric was, all you people know just where it's at now, walking down the street with a baseball bat now. It's about the kids in the neighborhood. We weren't going to use that song anymore, and I played that chord, and I Smell a Rat popped out again. Meg played it with me. I started singing the lyric from that other song about the kids in the neighborhood again, and we said, this is perfect. What do you like when you hear that? You've got a couple of ideas kind of rustling around in their catalog, and just out of thin air they decide that it's a good idea, and then it turns out to be this perfectly assembled, simplistic punk rock anthem. Like, where does your mind go when you hear that?
I think what I think of is limiting your scope in your process, like the way that the White Stripes do, the way I understand them to work, allows you to, like, when the inspiration hits you, you can just put things together. A lot of people might spend a lot of time futzing about and wondering if this song was finished, like after writing. Let's say that the published version is 90 seconds. A lot of people would say, "Oh, this is a great beginning, but how do I finish it?"
Yeah.
Jack White says, "It's done." What do you mean it's done? This is the intro to a song. He goes, "The song is over." You're like, "Why is it over?" Because I got hit by the lightning bolt of inspiration, and the inspiration was bum 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 da 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 da. And then he's like, and then I smell a rat. And he's like, what else is in there? I don't know. Baseball bat. Like,
What else do you
chop it
need?
up, print it. Sounds like crap. We're done. Like,
Hey, buddy, make sure it doesn't sound too good.
yeah, exactly. Like, it's so whether you like him or not, a guy I think about often is Pablo Picasso. A lot of people, he's a pretty unsavory person if you look into his personal life, but we're going to ignore that for the purposes of what I'm talking about. Buddy made a piece of art every day of his life in adulthood. There are
Really?
thousands of Pablo Picasso originals,
Very
because
cool.
I think the lesson you got to learn from that is don't be so precious about your output. Like, or not everyone is going to be able to be like this. Some people are tweakers, they have to adjust the knobs on every little thing till it's perfect. Some
Of course.
people are just makers.
Yeah.
And I tend to think, I don't know Jack White personally, but I think that the vibe I get is he wants to get stuff out of his brain and into reality. And if you give yourself a limited color palette, limited set of notes you're willing to play, limited number of instruments, the complications are going to just get out of the way. They're just not, you're not going to be able to confuse yourself into taking 3 months to write a song because you wrote it in an hour and a half. Whatever, something like that. You get what I'm saying? Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense, and that's exactly like I've read countless Jack White interviews,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what he wants. You simplify the process to make your art as authentic as humanly possible without getting in the way. You don't, I don't know, you don't water it down. This is the purest thing. This is what I'm inspired to do, and like you don't, as soon as you find yourself like tweaking, or maybe I can add this here, or if I add some overdubs there, like
Yeah.
you don't need that. It'd be nice,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of shining examples of where that is amazing. Like every damn track off of Nevermind is Kurt's vocals doubled and tripled and quadrupled up
It's true.
because the Beatles did that.
I think,
And I'm not saying go ahead.
or sorry, one thing that I find interesting about Nirvana is I feel like they worked really hard aesthetically to try to tell you they weren't trying as hard as they were. They were like, how long did it take Kurt Cobain to get dressed to look like a slob? And the answer was like 90 minutes. And like, it's like, how long did it take to, do all the overdubs on Nevermind? And the answer is a long time. But
Yeah.
like the concepts are very simple and very like grungy, but the execution is very technical and precise. It's quite funny. I also
It's
really like them
funny.
too for other reasons, but
It's funny, and there's no right or wrong way. Like at
no.
the end of the day, it's art, it's subjective, and it's what works best for that individual. And like the
Mhm.
best art that Jack White has created is, you know, not under the gun, but just um, coming into a situation seemingly prepared with a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
Because when he's, I remember reading an interview he did about his Boarding House Reach album, which unfortunately is really, really bad.
Oh, no.
I love the man. He is my favorite artist. Well, I love his art. I don't know anything about him. We might not get along. We might have conflicting personalities, and that's okay. I loved what he said about how he challenged himself to make that album, which was, I'm going to get two different groups. One's going to be in LA, one's going to be in New York. One's going to, and they're going to have a lot of artists that are more familiar with creating and producing rap and hip hop music. And I'm going to try and create, I'm not going to, I'm going to make music through them. And he kind of went in under the gun, and like the idea is fantastic, but unfortunately the execution just wasn't there.
And excuse me for not knowing the answer to this, but when was, like, what era was this made? Like, at what point in his career?
2018.
Okay, so relatively recently. Or like,
yeah. But the best music he kind of does is where he's best art. It's like, I've got a general framework. Let's get it down. Let's get it out there fast, and let's not overcomplicate it. And his recent solo album, which I think is his best, really parallels to the White Stripes and kind of that type of process from all I can gather. But with White Blood Cells, which is what I Think I Smell a Rat is on, they kind of went into this environment that was a little foreign to them and not comfortable and familiar. And the tension and kind of the stress of that really came out in this album. There's a couple of songs in this album that are sweet and fun and good vibes. Hotel Yorba, Fell in Love with a Girl, We're Gonna Be Friends. But a lot of this album, and I Think I Smell a Rat, are tense and stressful, and it really resonates well. And that's why these songs stand out.
Yeah.
It's not, I didn't record this in the most comfortable environment possible. And you get the sense of what we were doing and the environment that was put in front of us. And it came out in the music, and it made it that much more memorable.
Yeah. I would even use the word sinister to describe Smell a Rat. I Think I Smell a Rat. Like, it's got, the thing that I really notice on that track is kind of the tone that the vocal takes, and how kind of arpeggiated almost his voice.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Yeah, but like vibrato. Sure. A lot of vibrato and a lot of kind of I don't know, just the creepiness to the lyrics combined with the tone, the way he's singing it, makes it sound like he really wants to mess those kids up and their children, I guess. So it's not great.
Listen, we've all been in an environment. Earlier, we've all been lived wherever we've lived. There has been those punk kids on the BMX bikes, and you just you quit breaking bottles or go somewhere else.
But yeah, talking about the process, there's two things I wanted to mention. One of them is that a wise person once said, editing is an act of service, right? And I really believe that. It's this kind of this idea that as an artist, you can kind of just barf everything out of you and be like, ta-da, here's all of my ideas, hope you like them. But kind of the best thing you can do is, in my opinion, barf them all out and then actually find the value in that and then present that to whoever the audience ends up being, right? Because otherwise, it's just kind of without self-curating, you're not you're not finding what's best of what you're coming up with. You're just giving everything, which is, potentially not great.
A little selfish too.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the idea of being so limited can often find the best results, right? You've narrowed your focus and you are just trying to do the best with the limitations you've put on yourself or the limitations you just have because of reality, right? Like, have you ever seen the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No, but I feel like I'll have to now.
I think even if you don't like sushi,
Who
or
doesn't?
even if you don't, this movie is pretty awesome. It's about this elderly sushi chef whose restaurant is in the subway station somewhere in Tokyo. I'm not super familiar with Tokyo, but they've got the massive metro system. And this man has a sushi restaurant. I believe it has 7 seats. And this is a Michelin starred sushi restaurant in a train station. Generally speaking, these people are not super keen on giving tiny hole in the wall restaurants in, you know, like, I don't want to be mean, but like,
Transit hubs.
yeah, transit hubs, like low rent kind of areas, a lot of shine, but they have because this man has dedicated his life to sushi, which is, in theory, like in terms of the list of ingredients, simple food. In terms of the execution, so it's like once you've decided that the color palette's only so large, once you've decided
Yep.
that the list of ingredients is only so large, you created these artificial scarcities and you don't have to think, what if I did something off the menu? It's not available, you know? So you can just kind of work on perfecting what is on the menu. Like, how am I going to cut this tuna? Am I
Yeah.
going to put soy sauce on it? I don't know.
I love this because this is exactly how in with the insight into the creative process and the performance process and everything that went into the White Stripes that Jack White would share about, he's just describing that. I got this, I got that, I got this, I've got a couple of guitars that don't really work and that forces me to stay on the ball. I've got a keyboard that's just a little bit too far away from my mic. I've got, if I want to pick, I got to go back and get it. How am I going to make the best possible thing, whether it's a performance or a recording, within that environment? And it worked. It made that art incredibly special, and it's why they were, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
The first year of eligibility, and it's just
And
it's incredible.
And if I understand my Jack White lore, he's like a practice fiend, just all music all the time, which is like leads me to believe that he's capable of doing stuff that's a lot more finicky and complicated, like if they ask him to be more of a Yngwie Malmsteen or whatever style guitarist, I bet he could like if you told him like, we're playing metal today, Jack, he'd be like, yeah, all right, let's go. And then like,
Yeah, he has the ability, he has the chops, and
yeah,
I think he improved as the White Stripes went on. But I also think that there was something always there. There was this special talent that, once he kind of changed his limitations, he was, you were very quick to know that he could melt your face off with a solo.
Yeah, I mean, and you were mentioning the like kind of janky guitars he had access to. It is amazing how much access to good tools will help your output if you're used to working with like janky ones.
Of course. Let's move on to our next little segment.
Right.
It is called "Little Room, Big Impact." It's the song's legacy. This was not a single. It was not a B-side. It was an album track. Also, I gotta say, Stylus Magazine said that this was that on this album there were 2 consecutive tracks described by Andrew Unterberger as engaging filler. I Think I Smell a Rat features lines that rhyme with rat, while Aluminum is a heavy metal instrumental that features Jack and Meg screaming wordlessly over a sludgy guitar akin to early Nirvana. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's fair. The first time kind of we were all exposed to it, the casual fan or the casual music enjoyer was the 2002 Video Music Awards. A few things, I don't know if you remember this one, Matt, but a couple of very famous things happened at this Video Music Awards.
Ooh, let me guess. Was it Rage Against the Machine climbing the stage?
2 years too late.
Oh,
at this point,
darn.
it was the Hives and the Vines in a battle of the garage rock bands.
Beautiful.
This was also the Video Music Awards where Britney Spears was there to wish Michael Jackson a happy birthday, and he thought he was getting an award for the Artist of the Millennium, but in reality, the trophy-looking thing was too heavy to put on his birthday cake, so it was just kind of like a side, and he was totally confused and out of it.
That's the most embarrassing thing that would ever happen to Michael Jackson.
Eminem picked a fight with Moby at this one.
Yeah, I remember
said
that made it into the lyrics later. Lyrics I am not legally allowed to repeat.
And most importantly, the White Stripes performed a medley. They had all these fan club and big White Stripes fans come out all wearing white and red, and the White Stripes performed a medley of songs off of White Blood Cells, Dead Leaves, Fell in Love with a Girl, and I Think I Smell a Rat. One of the funnier things about this is all these people are on stage and they need to like dance to the music. So to Fell in Love with a Girl, that's easy enough. Then with Dead Leaves, it's like, that's kind of slow and challenging.
Yeah.
And they also had to dance to I Think I Smell a Rat. So it wasn't their finest. It wasn't like watching Soul Train. It was there was not the best moves on camera.
No, I can imagine that being like, unless you have a dance like choreographed, ready to go in the chamber to smell a rat, you're not busting out something. Like you're not scrambling your way through that one.
No, it was tough, and they had a gig that night somewhere in California. And so MTV paid. This is where the White Stripes had their first kind of taste of like rock star lifestyle, where you need to come perform on the MTV Awards and get an award. Jack's wearing like a white suit with a red tie and a bowler hat. We're gonna fly you in a helicopter from the award show to your gig, and like you're like, okay, you are that big now. You're no longer looking to put 75 people in the Gold Dollar in Detroit on a Tuesday night. The machine is behind you, and they're all for it.
Mm-hmm. I really think that making cool music videos in that era was good enough to make you famous, because they actually had to put music videos on MTV and VH1, which they've stopped doing. It's not
MTV,
like YouTube.
It's just ridiculousness now.
Yeah. Just, and what's his name? The skateboarding 50-year-old Rob. What's his last? Deirdre.
That's his show.
Yeah. But like, he's like the co-CEO of MTV at this point. He's at least on the board. Like,
he's running that show.
He's deciding what time slots new shows are getting. It's like, will Chanel West Coast have a interview show?
Rob Diedrich will figure that out. He'll crunch the numbers.
It's all possible.
Speaking of numbers, NME, they reviewed the album. They gave it 4 out of 5 stars. That's a B+. That's 80%. And they said of this is the house of the rising stars. The lyrics are great. The attitude, unmistakable. What would I have liked to be? Everything you hate, Jack yelped in the Union Forever. While the... oh man, what word is this? Latinate lurch of I Think I Smell a Rat. All you little kids think you know just where it's at, using your parents like a welcome mat. hints at a moral fiber Limp Bizkit would do well to observe. So hit the nail on the head there of you damn kids.
I don't know where Limp Bizkit is from, but they feel like they embody that like special kind of shithead that I brought up earlier.
Matt, Limp Bizkit is from the most Limp Bizkit city you could ever imagine.
Wait. Tampa, Florida.
Close.
Darn.
Super close.
Oof. Jacksonville?
Correct.
Let's go. It's pretty good. Considering I had no idea. With
You know.
the hint that it was where I would have thought it would be. That's pretty great.
You hit your assumption dart got real close. You got
Duval County, let's go.
Rolling Stone gave White Blood Cells 3.5 out of 5, while Pitchfork gave the album a 9 out of 10. They loved it. And the song, which Jack White loves, it made it onto the White Stripes' Greatest Hits that was released in 2020. These are a lot of their songs are short, so a lot of things made the cut. I'm not saying bad songs made the cut. I mean, a lot of
just a numerous number.
Yeah, and it was like, that's sweet that they could include this song, and it's kind of formatted in a good way. I'll say that. We have a segment on the show called "Get Behind the Camera, Satan," to talk about the music video. There's none, so which means it's time to speak about the live performance history of this song. This is the 5th most played song in White Stripes history, according to setlist.fm, everybody's favorite website. It was played 290 times at 660-ish documented gigs.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So this setlist.fm, are people just going to shows, writing down the set list, and giving them their data? Or is there like a person who just goes to shows for that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do they get
it? It is
their
the
data?
Wikipedia of set lists, and it is the
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, how can they confirm the data they get, or do they?
I think, when somebody is so passionate about their craft, that you're like, I don't think that they're doing this to make it up. They're not going in there to fudge up the algorithm.
I believe it, and I know people that I think would submit set lists to them or something like that,
I unfortunately probably would too.
Yeah.
Growing up following this band in that little room forum, which when I went and saw Jack White at the Commodore in May, I'm one of the first people in line I met was like, "Hey, were you on the little room back in the day?" I'm like, "You're goddamn right I was. I lived on that thing."
Mm-hmm.
You'd go there and you would, because there was no set list and the live show was such a mystery, you would go there to like, I need to know what they played. And eventually the White Stripes on their website released that information, kind of as the band was shifting from a live act to not an archival one, but a historical act, unfortunately. Yeah. So the information's out there. I don't doubt it because
no,
it's like as fans.
If you're saying that this is in their top 5, do you say most played songs?
It is their 5th most played song.
That means you got to be well ahead of almost every others. Outside of the big boomers, outside of the top hits, this is, got to have been played.
Absolutely.
A crazy amount of times.
It was first played at a great venue with a great name in Toledo, Ohio on April 20th, 2001. That venue name, Bottle Rocket. Matt, would you be a regular at Bottle Rocket?
If I found myself living in Toledo, Ohio, I don't think you could pull me away from the bar at Bottle Rocket. That sounds like a place where you'd see dudes in jean jackets with their pervert glasses.
Pinball.
Yeah, pinball, drinking a sleeve of, like, I don't even know what beer they have in Ohio. I'm gonna call it Ohio Sludge, or yeah,
Bush Light.
Bush Light. Yeah, whatever.
Keystone.
Yeah, I mean, they might not want to support Pennsylvania in Ohio.
uh,
Maybe like, yeah, something like Columbus Brewery. I don't know.
yeah. So you're down at Bottle Rocket. You're with the boys. Hard shift at the plant. White Stripes are playing there. 420 2001. Their last performance, the White Stripes last performed it. Their second last show at the Sloss Furnaces in Birmingham, Alabama, on the Icky Thump Tour, July 30th, 2007. So they played this song 290 times between 6 years. So that was a live staple. And
Perfect as a live staple because you can kind of just hammer it in as a transition, like when you haven't actually stopped playing, or you can have the feedback still going from the previous
yeah,
song and just go right into this one and then go right into another song. I think that, like, if I had to guess, I would imagine that's the type of thing that they were doing at the time to get it in so regularly.
it was we talked in the last episode, that Little Room was kind of their North Star kind of song that kind of kept them honest. You're a performer, you've played in a lot of bands, that you kind of have a song that you choose to start out with that kind of gets everybody in the same groove and on the same page, and what kind of keeps us together. I think that this is one of those songs live. They had Screwdriver, which is the first song they ever recorded. Wrote. They had Cannon off the first album. And they would play those songs multiple times. They would tease them. They would play a couple of riffs. They would do maybe a verse or two, but they would always kind of go back to that. And I kind of think it was let's say one of us is playing sloppy, whether it's Jack or it's Meg, or maybe we're playing a little too fast. We know how this song needs to be played. It's kind of gonna, it's our internal metronome. It's gonna reset our clocks.
The back
we're
of the
gonna
hand,
give it
the back of the hand songs,
absolutely.
Definitely that's a thing. And like, I've always thought, as a person who's been trying to put together sets since let's say 13 maybe. The name of the game is pick a song for the first song and the final song that A, you've got in the pocket, and B, like, the crowd is gonna like. Like, if you don't want to be one of those shut up and play the hits bands, like, that's your business, right? But if you want to have the kind of most effect on the audience, a hit in the beginning and a hit at the end will leave a lot of people who might be upset with you not playing the hits way less upset.
I couldn't agree more. So as we said, Jack White absolutely loves this song. And it was a White Stripes song that he carried over and brought with him as a solo act. He's performed it 70 times in the 13 years that he has been performing solo. But he didn't play it until his second solo tour, which was supporting Lazaretto, and he played it 3 times in about 2014. And he has been playing it consistently since the Boarding House Reach tour in 2018. So I think it's a song that really represents kind of his creative process and what he looks for in his art, and kind of what he looks for in a live song. And when he's got no set, he's going off the cuff. He was doing that with Meg, and now he's doing it with his new band. And it's like, hey, let's all get on the same page here. Let's buckle down. Time for I Think I Smell a Rat for a verse or a chorus.
Beautiful. Love to hear that. I mean, yeah, I wasn't aware that he was just kind of like making up the sets as he goes.
Oh yeah,
that's a pretty wild choice. But like, when you hear it, it really feels kind of like it makes a lot of sense because like the energy of what is happening, kind of reacting to what's going on. Like if you're capable of structuring your stuff that way, and again having not having like 4 or 5 band members,
Mm-hmm.
way easier to just lock in on the person across from you, just play with them. Uh, that way you don't need such like complicated stage direction. Like a lot, I've got some friends in bands that actually played to large groups of people and have professional lighting and stage direction. And those people tell me that they basically need to lock in their whole um, set list and potential encores well in advance, so like the lighting can be cued correctly and the everything can be like not even just like the band coordinating within itself, but like the band coordinating with the venue.
Yeah.
It's like a challenge, right? So the idea that like the White Stripes are able to just kind of be in the room and feel out what should be happening, it's kind of cool. Like it's not something I knew about, but it very much fits the vibe and the project, and it makes you kind of appreciate what they're trying to do because like not everyone can do that, or not
No.
everyone is even allowed to, basically.
Matt, as we wrap up here, again, this is a song. This is an episode that snuck up on me, literally and figuratively. But figuratively, like I'm not saying I didn't. I think I Smell a Rat was not on my regular White Stripes rotation. But just kind of plowing. I was stuck in traffic today, and I'm like, well, I'll listen to this song on loop. That's kind of what I've been doing to get ready for these episodes. Well, traffic was so bad, and the song's only 2 minutes and 4 seconds that after about 6 times in a row, I'm like, okay, I know everything I need to know about this song. But it just it's an incredible track. It's so unique. I can't think of another song that sounds like it. Like there are White Stripes songs that kind of remind me of other bands or other artists, but this is one of their most unique sounding songs. As we wrap up the podcast and wrap up our conversation, what is your biggest takeaway about this song? And maybe it's something you took away after talking about it for an hour, or maybe it's you had this, you've always had this thought.
Oof, that is a good question. I just, when I think about this song, I think it goes back to the kind of themes of our conversation. Just that, like, simplicity doesn't have to be, like, rudimentary. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
isn't, like, people want to see something simple and think that that's an indication of a lack of skill or a lack of foresight or a lack of effort. Yeah. But, like, that this is a shining example of the fact that it's not true. It gets exactly what it needs out in 2 minutes with 2 instruments, one singer, uh, and like I think it's brilliant in its simplicity. Um, and this is the type of thing that we can talk about. It's a 2 minute song we just talked about for an hour. I think that like tells you everything you need to know, right? Like I don't know. I'm like a big fan of American football. It's like when you watch a draw play, which is just where they hand the football off to the running back and he goes straight up through the middle. Like that's the simplest play in the game, but if you do it right, it goes to the house. It's worth 7 just like any other. He doesn't need the crazy wings flying all over the place and like flea flicker for. I don't know if any of this makes sense to you, but
I love it. I
it's
love it.
some people get all complicated and have to do everything so complicatedly, but it's not necessary all the time. And I'm not saying that it's bad either. There's no right or wrong answers, but I really do appreciate simple, well executed stuff. Like for me, um, let's say like a Toyota that's been on the road for 400,000 kilometers is more beautiful than like a Lamborghini that you try to drive it out the driveway and the transmission just goes falls apart. And you're like, oh man, it's gonna be really sweet when I get this thing going on the highway at 195 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds. When that actually happens, bro. When that happens, it's gonna be sweet. And the guy driving his Toyota is like, well, that's kilometer 400,011 in this whole time that your car's still stuck in the driveway. You know, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if any of that made sense, but it made sense to me, and I don't care.
Okay. That was Matt Kerr. I'm Ryan Schaap. That was Matt Kerr. He is a delight. He is a good friend. Somebody with very astute observations. Somebody I really like listening to editorialize and dissect things. We're going to do another one of these next week. And the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that for like 100 or so more weeks. You don't know what the next song is going to be. But I do. And I'm not going to tell you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and enjoying it. And as always, the Hardest Podcast to Podcast is hosted and produced by Ryan Schaap. Artwork by Catlin Likely. Amanda Schultz is our assistant editorial producer. Mike Noble is our Gato.